only have a few more minutes before we go to the next workshop. Oh. You go ahead.
I feel a bit guilty about bringing this up because I haven't been involved with it due to circumstances in my life, but I think it's a good example of a prefigurative practice. Free schools are experiencing a bit of a resurgence in the New York area. There's one in Brooklyn that opened a few years ago in 2005, and there's one, I think, right in this neighborhood that opened last year in September, and they're democratically run. All the decisions that involve the administering of the school and also the curriculum and so on are decided in a directly democratic way involving all the students, and each student and staff member has one vote, so teachers can't really coerce the students into doing things they don't want. I find that particularly inspiring.
Yeah.
Neighborhood bartering networks, well organized, Skillshare, trade, you know, I've heard about a really good one out in Vancouver, BC. I don't know what's going on in the States as far as that.
Did everyone hear this? Bartering networks, neighborhood bartering networks? Any other few examples that folks that haven't spoken before we sort of wrap up so the next workshop can happen? Oh, somebody. I know it's hard if you're not in it.
What about the really real free markets?
You want to make a 1 minute point about the really free markets?
If I can make half minute for that, I keep half minute for something else.
Yeah.
Okay, two things. One is the G20 has announced that the next summit is going to be in New York City.
Yeah.
They're giving us a gift.
Right.
I agreed to the book fair to make the last event of the night a spokes council. They said, don't give the book fair that extra job. So, okay. So I'm going to take names of anyone who's interested in organizing as far as I'm concerned. They found my address in the phone book and they said, we're coming to your city. So I got to greet them. And I'm looking for anyone who wants to join you. Put your name on the sign-up sheet over there. The other thing is on the really free market, there's going to be a panel presentation at 2:45. It's something that's been going on for about 5 years. The first one was organized on the occasion of the G8 summit at Sea Island in Georgia, in North Carolina, Washington, and somewhere else. As a response to show this is not what we're against, but this is what we are for. And in New York, it's been going on for the last 4 years. In the last 3-4 months, it acquired dramatic evolutionary force. Not only has the free market been expanding where it's been going on with the primary organizers called the Anarchist network, but 4 independent groups picked up on their own. 2 of them are going to be here later and developed their own concept. Just ran with it about 500, 600, 1,000 people. The next one is going to be April 26th back at Judson. We say where everything you bring is free and everything you take is free. It's also free services, and hopefully, beginning last time and hopefully more and more in the future, it will also be a free marketplace of ideas. So we're encouraging groups who have similar passions, emotions, to take all the coffee tables that we have, which could be used by somebody, and come and recruit, promote, motivate, do propaganda. Just don't do anything with money. You can even create a sign-up list and do direct marketing with no money at the spot. Thank you.
So I just want to, I should have, anyway, thanks for your patience on throwing out examples. I want to end on the notion of thinking about if you're interested in anarchism, I encourage people to read more. There's a book fair, go over and look for good anarchist books to read about thinking about anarchism. But I think the really interesting model to figure out what you even understand about anarchism is to do a study group, which is a good prefigurative practice. Is like, I want to learn about what anarchism is. I'm going to get 2 of my friends or 3 of my friends, and we're just going to read some stuff. We're going to download some stuff, and we're going to talk about what we understand it to be. And from there, another way to sort of is there are a bunch of different non-branded anarchist practices that people end up, from food not bombs, critical mass, really free markets, etc., is to try to move beyond the sense of like, if you're an anarchist, these are the 5 prefigurative practices we do. Which I was hoping, it's great that some of those came up, and those are really good prefigurative practices. But part of it is for us to continually push ourselves. That's, to me, how we participate in societies, even in our own heads, to be around like, well, was this prefigured enough? Does this really push something? I'm going to a demonstration. How can I actually, I love the really free market as its beginning, as an example of a prefigurative practice of going to a space that is about saying no and trying to say, how can we say yes in that space? How can we prefigure in this moment the world we want to see? How can we do that all the time? I really want to keep emphasizing with anarchism is what keeps me saying I'm an anarchist despite all the stuff I don't like in it, or all the like, sometimes when it feels like we're just kind of complaining about the world or we're doing things that make a world just for ourselves, I think it ends up being really insular, is how can we continually think about what that better world we want to see looks like and how we're going to try to implement it all the time with people that also aren't like us. So the other night at my anarchist bookstore, we had a talk on how the FBI was, an author, about how the FBI has been trying to, stop and kill and hinder black radicals and black leftists. And some high school kids came there because they liked, he was talking about Tupac, and they came because they liked his music, and their guidance counselor said, oh, he's your favorite musician, come listen. And they came into our anarchist book fair store. And then some military guys were 8 miles away from an elite military academy. 3 giant military guys walked in, and 2 of them are applying to join the CIA right now. And we all sat, and then there was a bunch of anarchists. And we have this space where I want to have conversations with people that aren't like me. I want to create, that's a prefigurative. I was so happy when I saw those 3 scary military guys walking in, because I was like, they felt comfortable coming into a space. I'm prefiguring a different way of relating to my collective, to my space, to my community. And we let them have a dialogue that wasn't about shouting and was listening to each other. And we didn't have to agree with each other. And maybe they'll change their minds a little bit. And maybe I'll get a better understanding of what compels someone like that to want to do that. And that might shake me up too. So we prefigure in ways that surprise us, that open up space, that isn't just about for us, and that looks at how we can make the world a more and more inclusive, better place. So really, if you're an anarchist or you're more interested, go find out more about anarchism, because I think it's one of the only political philosophies that asks such broadly overarching, sweeping questions about a better world. I don't think any other political philosophy does that, or any other political practice. I love your example of like, but you missed it. Because here in the food, we need to do this and we need to do that, and you didn't do that, Cindy. And that's what I love about anarchism. You would say that to me is exactly why I love anarchism. Is that it's okay to say those things to each other. It's okay to say, but you missed all these other things in this moment of what could be prefigurative, what could be a wider practice, what could be more encompassing. And that's why I would encourage you to look into anarchism, not to necessarily make you an anarchist, but to get you to ask these large overarching questions that push us toward a more beautiful, inclusive, larger, prefigurative world for all of us. It includes more of us, not just people at this book fair, not just people who say they're anarchists, not just, and I want to end on, I saw a living example of that the other day. I went to I could care less whether people get married or not. I personally never will. I don't understand its connection to the state and capitalism, both of which I want to get rid of. But in Vermont, we just passed, the state legislature for the first time just passed same-sex marriages. And it wasn't about the marriage. I've never experienced such a good example of direct face-to-face democracy in a representative system in my life, and I was like astonished that they did it better than I've ever seen anarchists do it, in a place where people, after 9 years of fighting about, Vermont passed civil unions 9 years ago, and it was ugly and mean and angry and awful and terrible and divisive. 50% of the state thought one way, and every single person in the state had an opinion, had a button, a bumper sticker, a sign. For months, it was horrible. 9 years later, the ability for people to look at each other, listen to each other, dialogue about it, have their minds changed, admit they were wrong. Now 2/3 to 3/4 of the people in the state where I live and in the legislature think it's a good idea that not marriage per se, but that people should be seen and included in what we understand as people. That was a phenomenal discussion I witnessed last week. Almost nobody even talked about marriage half the time. It was about, wow, this is my neighbor, and I never realized I was wrong about my daughter. I was wrong about this person, my colleague. And that person is more human than I thought they were. And they were able to then talk to each other in a different way. I was like, wow, that's a damn good prefigurative practice. If we could be that successful about being able to push social change and push the way people see each other. So I want to emulate, not a state, I don't want to create a new state, but I want to emulate now abilities for people to look at each other in different ways and see each other and include each other more. And I hope we can do that as anarchists, as being more humane to each other and be more inclusive and think more broadly about how we can include not just ourselves, but other people in this better world. So I really want to end on that, because I've been really inspired this week by actually watching that, an example of that in the most unlikely of places, because I never thought I'd be in a place being excited that marriage had passed in a state legislature. I was shocked that I was like tears were rolling down my eyes when it happened. But it was because of the way it happened, the process that happened to get to that was astonishing. And we need to see those moments and say, I don't care if I just learned that from the state legislature. I want to bring that back to a different world, the way people were able to make a decision together. And that's what I'm asking you to do, is look at those things in moments that you don't expect, bring those surprises into the work we do, and push them out to get people to challenge the world and make it a non-hierarchical, beautiful, wonderful, loving, caring society, we would understand too. So thanks for your patience, and I got to run down to table at Black Sheep Books, because so come visit. Thank you.